Right, there we go. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our coffee conversation this morning. My name is Elena Pinetto with Forge Breast Cancer Survivor Center. Today we are speaking with Laura Rutledge, who is a registered dietitian nutritionist who specializes in oncology nutrition. Laura, I want to say thank you so much for being here with us virtually this morning. And really, I'd just like to kick us off by asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself and some about your background.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for having me. I've spoken at some Forge events before, certainly in person, and enjoyed those. So I'm glad to be speaking again, even if it's in kind of this virtual setting. But I am a registered dietitian, and a little bit kind of background about myself. I did my undergraduate training at Auburn and then came to Birmingham after that. My undergraduate was in nutrition and became a registered dietitian. I came to Birmingham and got my master's at UAB in exercise physiology. I loved that kind of combination of those two, exercise and nutrition together. They certainly work together. And started working at UAB as a clinical dietitian at the hospital there for a number of years, probably about 13, 14 years. And then moved over to the academic side and taught in the nutrition program. They have a dietetic internship and a master's program in nutrition. So taught a number of classes there, as well as started working in what is called a supportive care clinic, which we saw a lot of patients with. It was a multidisciplinary clinic treating patients with chronic disease, a number of those with cancer. And so that's kind of developed my interest in oncology nutrition, and started doing some talks to support groups and things like that. And then I retired from UAB and started working at St. Vincent's radiation oncology. And so now in the outpatient setting, working with oncology patients going through that treatment, as well as medical oncology patients going through chemotherapy and other regimens there. So I've lived in Birmingham ever since college. I'm originally from Huntsville. But I love Birmingham and have really enjoyed it here, and getting to know people from different organizations such as Forge and all the resources that are available to our patients here.
Thanks, Laura. And it's really incredible also to hear just the varied experiences that you've had in applying all of the knowledge and experience kind of with different settings. I mean, you've really gotten a chance to see how important nutrition is, maybe on a preventative side, as well as, when someone is in treatment or even long-term survivorship, which I know is something we'd like to talk about.
Yeah. And I think, that's what really sparked my interest in nutrition just in general. I'm probably one of the few people that declared that major as a freshman and continued in it. A lot of times people change. And I think what has interested me so much about nutrition is the science of it all. And as you mentioned, how our nutrition and our lifestyle, our food intake, our exercise, all those things can affect development of disease, potentially development of disease, as well as really the management and treatment. And then, as you mentioned, survivorship. So how we go from that point of diagnosis and decrease our risk of recurrence, or just improve our overall health to get through the treatment, all those aspects. And nutrition is a very important part of that people don't always think about. They think about medicine and they think about maybe surgery or that kind of treatment, but they don't think about really their lifestyle habits, how that may impact their treatment.
I think I've heard anecdotally or colloquially just how important that this is. Nutrition and healthy lifestyle is like a medicine in and of itself, right? That if you're taking a medicine and you do all of these changes also, it's like you have double impact of the medicine.
Exactly. And that's one thing I often tell people is a lot of times during treatment, people may not feel like eating. We have such association between what we eat and enjoying food, and maybe during treatment, they're not enjoying it as much as normal, which is normal for people to experience that. And then you have to kind of shift your mindset about how you think about food. So at that point, you're not eating necessarily because you enjoy it as much, but you're recognizing that that's an important part of your treatment.
Well, Laura, and this is, I think all of these questions kind of feed into each other, and then some of them are pretty big picture, but just what tips do you have for someone? And maybe we just consider it the continuum of cancer prevention and then treatment and then, into survivorship. So just what nutrition, tips and secrets and tools of the trade, might you have for someone from a cancer prevention standpoint?
Right. And I'm going to lump the cancer prevention and survivorship kind of in together, because really the recommendations nutrition-wise are the same for those in terms of prevention of cancer as well as survivorship after cancer treatment. And some of the tips and recommendations, and these are recommendations by organizations such as the American Cancer Society and the American Institute for Cancer Research. And one of the main ones, kind of all-encompassing ones, is choosing a plant-based diet. And that doesn't necessarily mean being a vegetarian. People could choose that path, but having the majority of your intake come from plant sources. And so that's your vegetables, your fruits, your whole grains, and not excluding animal sources, but limiting those. And, I tell people, you think about when we used to be able to go out to eat, if you ordered something, typically the meat is the largest part of your plate, the largest portion that you get. Kind of shift the thinking there and have just a smaller portion of that and a larger portion of your vegetables, your fruit, and your whole grains. And so with that, you're getting fiber, you're getting antioxidants from the vegetables and the fruit, you're getting healthy fats. If you're choosing nuts, you're still getting protein if you're choosing things like beans and the nuts and whole grains. So that encompasses a lot of kind of the nutrition things. But a part of that too is controlling your weight. And that is one thing that more and more research is finding is a risk factor for certain types of cancer. And I've heard some quotes talking about obesity is the new tobacco. We know that smoking increases people's risk for certain types of cancer. And obesity is also being shown to increase risk of certain types of cancer. And that's something that, in the United States, probably worldwide, is a problem. And so addressing that, and, if we think about that and then think about the nutrition recommendations of the type of foods to eat, kind of your portion size there, it can all play in together. So if you're got someone who is used to eating a lot of fast food, a lot of high fat, high calorie, high sugar food, and then they shift to a more plant-based diet, then automatically their caloric intake is likely going to decrease with that. And then that will help with weight loss too. So those are kind of from the aspect of both prevention and then survivorship. And in treatment, it really is kind of a wide variety of tips I could make. It really depends on how they're going through treatment, what they are experiencing. And, I want to point out that everybody is different. And, we can find out so much information online that can scare people. I was talking to somebody on the phone yesterday, and she had been prescribed a medication. And so she looked it up and, read all these side effects and recognized that, yes, it's important to be informed, but sometimes there's so much information that can scare people and may scare them away from taking something or doing something that really would benefit them. One of the most common things that I hear from people going through treatment that are struggling are nausea is probably one of the biggest ones that I hear related to some of the medications that they're on. It's very common. you think about it, if you're nauseated, you're not going to want to eat. And so then they lose weight, maybe they get dehydrated. So it can cause a lot of kind of long-term problems there. If someone starts losing weight, they're staying dehydrated, they're going to have more side effects. And so one of the things I always like to do is find out kind of what the root problem is for their lack of intake or poor intake, and try and address that problem. So something like nausea, the problem is likely from the treatment they're receiving, but then how can we address the nausea? And there are medications that can treat that are very good, and talk to them about those and how they're taking those. But also thinking about like food intake. If someone's experiencing that, I recommend foods that are cold or room temperature, because you think about hot foods have more smell, or they emit more smell. And so if oftentimes that can trigger nausea. And so having things like peanut butter and crackers and fruit and cheese, sandwich, something like that in place of kind of a hot meal. And when I used to work in the hospital, you think about when food is delivered to patients, it would often come, on a tray with a cover. And, they put it down in front of a patient and take that cover off, and they would just be hit with the smell. And so in the hospital, having someone else take that off before it gets close to the patient. But in the home setting, maybe the individual's in a different room from where the food's being prepared. Maybe they're by a window or by a fan where they have some air circulating. So those type of things, working through what little tips like that can help people. Another thing that helps with nausea that I've been recommending to a lot of patients is ginger. There's a lot of different little ginger kind of candy lozenge type things. And it's been very effective for those to just, pop that in their mouth for a couple of minutes. And you think about that with pregnancy, it can help with nausea there too, but it also has helped a lot of patients that are experiencing nausea related to their chemotherapy. So that's, one of the biggest ones, but really it depends on the type of treatment someone's receiving and their symptoms and side effects related to that. I always encourage people to talk to the dietitian where they're being treated. If they don't know who that is, certainly ask. And if there's not someone there, then maybe they could refer to someone else. And I'll give some resources a little bit later about that. But, don't suffer in silence. Let the medical team know what symptoms you're experiencing. And oftentimes there are some ways to improve that and address those symptoms.
Laura, is it common, this is totally off script, but is it common for like a cancer center or a cancer center to have a dietitian on staff? And I know that this is a generalization because I'm sure it varies greatly, but, is it pretty common at this point for a dietitian to be part of that medical team for someone with cancer?
I think it depends on the size probably of the organization there. I think the larger ones likely so. And there may not be a full-time dietitian there. So I know in some places the dietitians are just there, 1 or 2 days a week. So it depends on that. But I think in a lot of the larger ones, yes, there's a dietitian. But then there's also private practice dietitians. So maybe if there's not someone in that organization, then hopefully they have identified some dietitians in the area that they could refer people to.
I like the advice to not suffer in silence, right? Yeah. That is, part of your treatment, your overall, experience and success with treatment is making sure that, these aspects, you're taking care of yourself nutritionally speaking.
Right. And you have to be your own advocate. So that's where, if you're experiencing, the nausea, if you're experiencing pain, let the medical team know, because, maybe there are, there could be some medications for that. I mentioned the nausea medications. There are a number of those. So maybe if you have one that's not effective, then maybe there's something else that would be more effective for you, or, trying some different things there. But, that's one of the symptoms that people shouldn't suffer with, because there are ways to deal with that.
Well, shifting gears a little bit, I'd love to hear from you, like, what is Nourishing Plates, and like what inspired you to work on Nourishing Plate?
Yeah. So I mentioned when I worked at UAB that I worked in a supportive care clinic. So that's where I really started working more with oncology patients. And, what I kind of found from that is there's a lot of information online about nutrition. Some of it is very good and very helpful, and some is not. And so I wanted to create a resource for oncology, or targeted towards oncology, that provided really sound nutrition information. And what I mean by that is evidence-based information. And so using information from some of these resources, the American Cancer Society, American Institute for Cancer Research, recommendations that have come out from large organizations about nutrition and cancer, and provide that online, provide some kind of tip sheets online for symptom management, so such as the nausea, altered taste, dry mouth, fatigue, those type of things. Have a resource for that online, as well as recipes. One of the things, whenever I do talks, I would take recipes, because people love that. Most people like to eat, like to cook, or like to try different things. And so to provide some easy recipes, and what I've done in that is tag them according to symptoms. So if something is tagged nausea, then it's something that's, cold or room temperature. It's not heavily seasoned. It's not real spicy or high fat. So it is targeted towards helping manage that symptom. If it's tagged cancer prevention, then that's something appropriate really for anybody. Really, all of them are appropriate for anybody. But, looking at that in terms of, this is something that's maybe high in fiber or high in antioxidants, those type of things. And so just having, website to give that information, along with, maybe talking about cherries, what's beneficial about cherries, and how, what are some recipes using cherries. So, it's been fun to kind of develop some different things and interact with people online in that respect too.
Yeah, I love having a reason why behind recipes. Like, I'm always curious as to, oh, I hear that these things are good, but why? So I've always appreciated kind of that next level of information.
Yes. And that's, you'll hear about superfoods, which I kind of hate to label things like that, because, almost all foods are good for you in some respect. And so I don't label them as superfoods, but there are certainly categories of foods that have a lot of nutritional benefit. And what is the nutritional benefit of that? So if I'm talking about cauliflower, it's a cruciferous vegetable. And, what are the nutritional benefits of cruciferous vegetables? And what are some ways you can get those in your diet? That type of thing.
And I think one thing that you may have covered in our tip sheet, but is just that there's no one item, right? No one food, no one superfood that's going to cure or prevent anything from happening, right? That it really is about having this great variety and all the different benefits from a lot of different foods.
And it's, I'm all about balanced eating. And so not looking at just one food or even just one meal by itself. Look at your whole intake, over a day, over several days, I love sweet, so I'll have dessert occasionally. But then I'm also including a lot of, whole grains and vegetables and things like that. So it's, people get kind of caught up in hearing about, oh, you need to eat this food. And so then they're trying to, include that, and they get stressed out. Maybe they don't like it, but they're eating it anyway. I mean, I don't think that is healthy for people to, focus on those type of things. It's finding the foods you enjoy that are good for you, and how you can have those in your diet. How can you structure your eating plan to include these healthy foods? And really, almost all foods can fit into a healthy eating plan.
Laura, this may be the toughest question I have for you,
Mm-hmm.
but what is your favorite Nourishing Plate recipe that you have made? Or maybe you have multiple, or maybe it's a specific food.
Yeah. Well, and actually I have one right beside me, because I was going to, I thought it would kind of be fun at some point maybe to do like a demonstration or something online. But one of them, I'll see if you can see it, are these, what I call little energy bites, energy balls. And it's just nut butter. This was peanut butter mixed with oats and dates, and then just a little pinch of salt in a food processor. And so I have a few different recipes on the site of different energy bites, different kind of combinations there. But I like something like that just for a little bit of energy. Maybe it's like a mid-morning snack, or afternoon pick-me-up, before going for a walk or something like that. It's easy to do, and I just keep them in the refrigerator or freezer and pop them out, a few minutes before I'm going to eat it. So that's one of them. One of the things I make the most probably is warm cauliflower salad. And I think I did that for a Forge video several months ago. And it's roasted cauliflower and then tossed with pumpkin seeds, pomegranate arils or pomegranate seeds, dried cranberries, and arugula, which is a green, kind of not really like spinach. It's a little more bitter than that, but just the combination of all of those with a real simple vinaigrette. And that's something that, from a nutrition standpoint is extremely nutritious, but also very good, very tasty. And it's a great side with, some grilled fish, or, could have a vegetarian meal if you had some beans alongside that, something for protein. But those are probably some of my favorite. And then as the weather warms up, as it gets a little higher temps, I make a lot of smoothies, but I don't do those in the winter too much. I just like those in the summer.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the cauliflower recipe, because cauliflower is one of my favorite vegetables. So that is delicious.
Yeah, cauliflower is really having a moment right now.
Oh yeah. And it's unfortunate because my mother, I think, has a lot of kind of gastro issues, I guess, with cauliflower, with broccoli, with Brussels sprouts.
Mm-hmm.
So if anyone kind of has that, is there something that they can take so that they can, enjoy those foods, but kind of deal with the bloating that may result afterwards?
Right. And, having something like, yes, those cruciferous vegetables, as you mentioned, the broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, all of those, some people do have more problems with GI issues, bloating. Having them cooked rather than raw is one way to help, because that helps kind of break down that. And there is a product called Beano. I hate the name of it. I'm not quite sure why they named it that, but it's a product that you take before eating those type of foods, or before eating beans if you have problems kind of digesting and absorbing those. And that is really beneficial, really helpful for a lot of people too. And just kind of one thing, especially when I'm talking about kind of going back to that cancer prevention or cancer survivorship eating plan, and including more of these type of foods in your diet, is doing it gradually. Because if you've got someone who never ate vegetables or never ate beans or something like that, and then they just started including that a lot, they're going to have problems with that. So you've got to increase those things gradually to give your body a little time to adjust to that.
Nice to know that it doesn't have to be kind of an immediate switch, that it is something that there's the opportunity to take your time, include better foods, good foods, and kind of get there.
And if you've got someone who, and I think that's important to note, because if you try and do something like that, kind of this all or nothing thinking, and so much of nutrition, there's a lot of kind of mental aspect to it, psychological aspect to it. And if you try and do all of that at once, and most likely you're not going to be able to succeed in that. It's too big a change to do at one, in one fell swoop. And then that is very defeating mentally to people. And then they're like, well, I can't do that. I'm just going to stop and, go back to what I was doing. But make small changes. So maybe it's just adding 1 or 2 vegetables a day, or adding maybe an afternoon snack is typically chips, or maybe I'm going to have a piece of fruit instead. So making small changes like that, get adapted to that, and then make more changes. And so not thinking into this all or nothing type thinking, because that is kind of setting yourself up to fail if you're going at it that way. Whereas if you're doing these small changes, then you can see, okay, I've accomplished that. That's good. I've done that. I've succeeded at that. Now I'm going to set another goal or set another change in my diet and then work towards that.
Yeah, I appreciate that advice, Laura, because instead of the kind of the yo-yoing or the up, down, up, down, up, down, that may happen regularly, it really is building successful kind of patterns of behavior over time.
Exactly.
Well, I'm wondering, do you have a story of kind of a meaningful time that you've spent kind of with someone kind of in this space to really help them get from, where they were to where they are now?
Mm-hmm. And I think, I was thinking about that, and I can kind of come at it from a few different perspectives there. But one, I want to emphasize that nutrition and diet is one aspect of our health, and it's potentially one aspect of cancer development or cancer survivorship. And sometimes I've worked with people that are scared of food. They're scared that what they have done caused their cancer, or what they are doing at this point, if they don't kind of follow what they would call a perfect diet, they're going to get cancer again. And so there's become a lot of fear around eating, and working with them to kind of, let's look at their behavior, what they're doing. Is there really the evidence base to support that? Do they need to be that restrictive? And because so many things can affect risk of cancer. Nutrition, your nutrition status, your weight, your diet is one aspect of hundreds, if not thousands, of things that can impact your risk. And so trying to kind of diminish that fear with people, that it hurts me when people are being so restrictive and they're so miserable in that, or maybe they're making their family miserable in that. Or I'm never going to eat this food again. And it's looking at that, again, their overall diet. That's what's important. Or maybe they're taking all of these supplements and spending a fortune on that and not focusing on their diet. And so there is, how can we make your diet a little bit healthier? How can we work towards that? Because really our body uses nutrients much better from food than it does from supplements. And so, getting back to kind of just that healthy eating plan with people that is balanced, that is realistic. That's where I think I've gotten a lot of satisfaction from working with people where you can kind of see their anxiety level go down in talking with them about that. So that's, one kind of situation. But then also in people going through treatment that may be struggling with eating, helping them to come up with ideas of how they can get the nutrients that they need. And even if they're not necessarily enjoying the taste of food, what are some things that can get in to get the calories and the protein and the vitamins and minerals that they need? And then seeing what I, really enjoy about working kind of in the outpatient setting is the ability to see people, as they progress. It's not a one and done type thing. And seeing people, I ate this and it was so good and I really enjoyed it. So those are some situations that have been very gratifying to me to see.
Well, I can see how in going through this conversation, how helpful it is for someone to have the opportunity to speak with someone, right? Because I think you made mention that there's so much information that's available online, some of it good, some of it maybe not so well vetted, and maybe contradictory, or there's just a lot to then process and actually put into your kitchen or into, whatever it is that you make for yourself. So I see there'd be tremendous benefit to work with someone or to have the opportunity to have a conversation with a registered dietitian. So you spoke to this a little bit, but if someone is interested as part of, cancer prevention, cancer survivorship, during treatment, kind of what do they need to do to try and find somebody?
Well, certainly ask where they're being treated if there is a dietitian there, number one. Because oftentimes if there's not a dietitian, well, maybe they have set up kind of a referral network that they can refer people to that they are familiar with. And then kind of nationwide, what I'll say is my kind of parent organization, which is the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, has a website that is called eatright.org. And if you go to that on the homepage, there is a little area called Find an Expert. And so you put in, I think it's your zip code, put in your zip code, or there's also the option to put in your interest or what type of dietitian you're looking for. So you could put in an oncology dietitian, or maybe it's, pediatric or whatever your interest is. And then you'll get a list of kind of people that may be in private practice or that can see people outside of, a specific organization. So that is one of the kind of nationwide resources that I would say people can utilize if there's not a dietitian where they're being treated.
That's helpful. Thank you. Really, my last question is just, do you have any kind of final thoughts that you'd like to leave with us today?
Well, I think, it's appropriate that we're doing this in March because March is actually National Nutrition Month. I mentioned that kind of parent organization, and every March they have a different theme. And the theme for this year is personalize your plate. And I like that because it really boils down to everybody is unique. Sorry. And you have unique needs, and your preferences, your tastes are unique. And so recognizing that, and your diet may look different from somebody else's, and that's okay. And so thinking about that and making what your eating plan is your own and owning that and enjoying that. So I want people to enjoy food. I think we're meant to enjoy food. And so finding what plan works for you and what you enjoy.
I love that. Well, Laura, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording so that we can just open it up for questions.